Become a confident English speaker. Hello, everyone. Today I want to share my personal journey of learning English, how I struggled, what worked, and how you can do it too. This isn't just another language learning guide. It's my story, filled with real challenges, practical solutions, and the mindset shifts that helped me become fluent. Learning a new language is never easy, and English, with its complex grammar, confusing pronunciation, and thousands of idioms, can feel overwhelming. But trust me, if I can do it, so can you. When I first started, I had no idea where to begin. I felt lost, insecure, and frustrated. I made countless mistakes, doubted myself multiple times, and even considered giving up. But through perseverance, trial and error, and a few game-changing strategies, I finally cracked the code. In this post, I'm going to take you through every stage of my English learning journey, the early struggles, the breakthrough moments, and the methods that transform my skills. I'll share the mistakes I made, the lessons I learned, and the secrets that helped me go from a nervous learner to a confident English speaker. My goal is simple: to inspire you, guide you, and give you the motivation to keep going, because your dream of speaking fluent English is absolutely possible. So grab a notebook, get comfortable, and let's dive into my English learning story. By the end of this post, I hope you'll walk away feeling encouraged and ready to take action. Let's begin. The journey begins. Struggles with English. When I started learning English, I quickly realized how overwhelming it could be. I didn't know where to begin, and I was bombarded with so many new words, rules, and sounds that didn't make sense to me. It felt like a huge puzzle with pieces I couldn't quite put together. I often found myself stuck, especially when it came to speaking. I'd hear native speakers talk so fluently, and I would wonder, why can't I do that? What's wrong with me? The fear of making mistakes was my biggest obstacle. Every time I tried to speak, I would freeze. My mind would go blank, and I couldn't remember the words I wanted to say. I was terrified that people would judge me or that I would embarrass myself. I'd either speak too slowly or make mistakes, and the fear of being misunderstood or looking foolish kept me from practicing as much as I should have. There were moments when I thought about giving up. Why wasn't I improving as fast as others? Why was it so hard for me to get the words out? I started comparing myself to others, especially people who seemed to learn languages so easily. It was discouraging, and I often wondered if I was just not cut out for this. I'd think, if only I were as confident as they are, I could speak like them. But then something shifted in my mindset. I realized that learning a language wasn't about being perfect or comparing myself to others. It wasn't about speaking without mistakes. I had to accept that making mistakes was a natural part of learning. I had to embrace the process, even if it was slow, and focus on progress rather than perfection. I reminded myself that every time I made a mistake, I was getting one step closer to fluency. The key was to keep practicing, to keep speaking, and to not be afraid to make mistakes. As I pushed through the fear and kept practicing, things started to improve. At first, I had to force myself to speak out loud, but over time, it became easier. I learned to organize my thoughts before speaking, which helped me feel more in control. Slowly, I started to speak more confidently, even if it wasn't perfect. I realized that fluency wasn't about being flawless. It was about expressing myself, even if I made mistakes along the way. With each conversation, I felt more comfortable. The fear I once had started to fade. I wasn't worried about sounding perfect anymore. I was focused on communicating my ideas. The more I practiced, the more confident I became. I realized that fluency doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from pushing through them and continuing to practice. And with that realization, I became more patient with myself and my learning journey. Fluency is a process, and it's okay to take it one step at a time. The important thing is to keep moving forward, and eventually the pieces will fall into place. So, no matter how difficult it seems at times, just keep going. The journey to fluency is worth it. The turning point, realizing the myths. After struggling with English for a while, I came to a powerful realization that would change the way I saw myself and my learning journey. For a long time, I had held certain beliefs about fluency that were simply myths, false ideas that were holding me back. I believed that fluency in English was a natural gift that only a few people were born with. I thought that those who spoke confidently and smoothly were just naturally good at languages, and I couldn't help but envy them. I convinced myself that I was too shy, too slow, or too inadequate to ever become fluent in English. In my mind, fluency seemed like something reserved for others, people who didn't have to struggle with every word, who could effortlessly string sentences together without pausing or hesitating. I saw those confident speakers and thought, they must have a special gift, or they must be naturally talented. I, on the other hand, felt like I was always lagging behind, unable to keep up. My shyness often made me hesitant to speak, and I was convinced that my slow pace was a sign of failure. But after some time, and through a lot of reflection, I stumbled upon a truth that completely shattered these limiting beliefs. Fluency is not a gift or talent. It is a skill that can be developed and strengthened with practice. I learned that speaking English confidently isn't something that happens overnight, nor is it something that a select few are just born with. Fluency comes from repeated practice, from continuously pushing yourself to improve, and from accepting that making mistakes is a part of the journey. When I realized this, everything changed. The pressure to be perfect was lifted. I no longer saw my mistakes as failures, but as opportunities to learn and grow. Fluency became less about trying to sound perfect and more about striving for gradual improvement. It became about speaking a little more clearly each time, getting a little faster with each conversation, and gaining confidence in my ability to communicate, even if I wasn't flawless. This realization freed me. It gave me permission to speak more freely, to make mistakes without feeling embarrassed, and to understand that my progress didn't have to be perfect. Every time I made a mistake, it was a step forward, not a step back. I didn't need to compare myself to others anymore, because I understood that everyone's journey to fluency is unique. What mattered was the small improvements I made every day, not the speed or perfection with which I learned. Once I accepted that fluency was a skill, not a gift, I became much more patient with myself. I gave myself permission to learn at my own pace and to focus on steady progress rather than stressing over my limitations. I embraced the process of learning and began to enjoy the journey, knowing that each little victory, whether it was a better conversation or a new word learned, was a part of becoming fluent. This shift in perspective was a game changer, and it empowered me to keep moving forward, no matter how long it took. Myth number 1. Some people are naturally confident speakers. This was a major belief that held me back for a long time. I used to watch others, especially those who were extroverted, and assume that they were born with a special ability to speak confidently. Their words seemed to flow effortlessly, and their voices were always steady and strong. I envied them, wishing I could speak as easily as they did. I convinced myself that confidence in speaking was something that certain people just naturally had, and that I was not one of those people. But over time, I came to realize that this belief was simply a myth. Confidence in speaking is not something that people are born with. It is a skill that anyone can develop. It's not about being extroverted or having a loud personality. Confidence in speaking is something that grows over time through practice, self-awareness, and a willingness to embrace imperfection. As an introvert, I spent a lot of time thinking before I spoke, which at first seemed like a disadvantage. I often doubted my ability to speak quickly or fluently, especially when I saw others talk so effortlessly. But I learned that introverts actually have an advantage when it comes to communication. The ability to think carefully before speaking is a powerful tool. Instead of speaking impulsively, we have the time to organize our thoughts and express them with clarity. The key to becoming a confident speaker, especially as an introvert, is to embrace this process of thinking before speaking. It might take a little more time, but this pause allows us to communicate more effectively and thoughtfully. I started to use this as an advantage in every conversation and presentation. Before any important discussion, I would take a few minutes to gather my thoughts and plan out what I wanted to say. This preparation gave me confidence, knowing that I had a clear structure for my words. I also began to practice organizing my thoughts out loud. Whether it was in front of the mirror or talking to a friend, I would rehearse key points to build confidence in how I expressed myself. This simple practice helped me speak more smoothly and feel more in control of my words. It made me realize that confidence didn't mean speaking spontaneously or quickly. It meant being clear, organized, and deliberate with my words. Over time, I learned that many introverts, just like me, can be exceptional communicators. We don't need to emulate extroverted styles of speaking to be confident. We can use our natural strengths to communicate with clarity and intention, embracing the idea that confidence doesn't come from being naturally extroverted, but from preparation and practice allowed me to unlock my full potential as a speaker. The more I practiced, the more I believed in myself and my ability to communicate effectively. And that belief in myself made all the difference. Myth number 2, fluency means speaking fast. For a long time, I believed that fluency in a language was all about speed. I thought the faster I spoke, the more fluent I would sound. I was convinced that if I could speak quickly and keep up with native speakers, I would be seen as fluent and confident. This belief led me to rush through my words, trying to speak as fast as possible in an effort to sound more proficient. However, after a while, I started to realize something crucial. Fluency is not about speed at all. It's about clarity and communication. Speaking too quickly can actually work against you. Not only does it make it harder for others to understand you, but it also increases the chances of making mistakes, which only affects your confidence. I had to confront the reality that being fluent wasn't about talking faster. It was about making sure my words were clear and well organized. I stopped obsessing over speed and started focusing on delivering my message more clearly. Fluency, in my eyes, became synonymous with clear communication, not just rapid speech. This was a big shift in my mindset. One of the key habits I developed was embracing pauses while speaking. At first, it felt awkward to pause in the middle of a sentence, but over time, I realized how powerful pauses could be. They allowed me to gather my thoughts, ensure I was using the right words, and maintain control over what I was saying. A pause gave me the breathing room to think ahead and prevented me from stumbling through my words. Taking those brief moments to breathe helped me slow down my speech and made my communication sound much more organized and confident. Rather than feeling rushed and flustered, I began to feel more in control of my words and ideas. The rhythm of speaking became natural, and I realized that fluency didn't require speaking fast. It required speaking thoughtfully and clearly. Pauses, when used effectively, became my secret weapon. They allowed me to avoid the pressure of constantly filling the silence with words, and instead, I could focus on delivering my message with intention. Over time, I became more comfortable with this approach and noticed a significant improvement in my speaking ability. So if you're trying to become more fluent in English, remember, it's not about speaking fast. It's about speaking clearly, taking your time when necessary, and making sure your message is understood. Fluency comes from the confidence to pause, think, and communicate with clarity. Myth number 3, confident speakers never ask for clarification. I used to believe that asking for clarification during a conversation was a sign of weakness. I thought that if I asked someone to repeat something or explain a point again, it would make me seem unsure of myself, or worse, like I wasn't fluent enough to understand. I was afraid that it would undermine my confidence and make me appear less capable. But as I continued to grow, I realized that this belief was completely wrong. Confident speakers actually ask for clarification, and they do it with purpose. Asking for clarification is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a powerful communication tool. It shows that you are fully engaged in the conversation and actively listening. It reflects your interest in truly understanding the message being conveyed and your desire to participate meaningfully in the exchange. Instead of making you seem less confident, it actually highlights your commitment to effective communication. In any conversation, whether it's in a casual chat, a professional setting, or even a debate, there will be moments when you don't quite catch what someone said or when something isn't clear. That's perfectly normal. And instead of silently struggling or pretending to understand, asking for clarification allows you to engage more thoroughly. It shows that you care about getting things right and that you're invested in the discussion. I began to embrace this concept, and it made such a difference in how I approached conversations. I started using simple phrases like, "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you say it again?" Or, "Could you explain that a bit more?" These questions were not signs of hesitation or uncertainty. They were signs of active participation. By asking questions, I was demonstrating my commitment to understanding, and this made me feel more confident, not less. At first, it was a little intimidating to ask for clarification, especially in situations where I thought I should already know the answer. But over time, I realized that no one expects you to know everything, and most people appreciate when you ask for clarification. It shows that you care about the conversation and value the exchange of ideas. What's more, I learned that the more I used these phrases, the more natural they became. I wasn't afraid to speak up when I didn't understand something, and it became a normal part of my communication. So, if you ever find yourself in a conversation where you're not sure about something, remember that it's okay to ask for clarification. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It demonstrates that you are fully engaged, that you're listening actively, and that you are committed to having a meaningful exchange. And the best part? It will actually make you feel more confident in the long run because you're taking control of the conversation and ensuring that you understand everything clearly. Myth number 4. Confident speakers don't make mistakes. This myth is probably the biggest one I had to break through during my language learning journey. For a long time, I believed that making mistakes while speaking meant I wasn't confident, that I would lose my credibility, and that others would judge me for my errors. I thought that a confident speaker was someone who spoke perfectly without any hiccups or mistakes. However, I quickly learned that this was far from the truth. The reality is, everyone makes mistakes. Yes, even the most confident and fluent speakers make mistakes, and that's okay. Mistakes are a natural part of communication, whether it's in your native language or a second language. In fact, I make mistakes regularly, both in English and in my second language. I remember one particular moment that really hit home for me. Just recently, I was speaking in a meeting with colleagues. I was in the middle of explaining a point when I suddenly forgot a simple word. My mind went blank, and I stuttered for a moment, trying to recall the word. It felt embarrassing at that moment, but instead of letting the mistake shake my confidence, I took a deep breath, collected myself, and continued speaking. And you know what? The conversation kept going, and no one seemed to mind at all. It wasn't a big deal, and it certainly didn't diminish my ability to communicate effectively. The key takeaway here is that what matters is not whether you make mistakes, but how you handle them. Mistakes are part of the learning process. They don't define your worth as a speaker or your level of confidence. In fact, they're opportunities to improve and grow. I learned that when I made a mistake, instead of dwelling on it, I could simply correct it if necessary and move on. The faster you let go of your mistakes, the easier it becomes to keep going without letting them disrupt your confidence. Over time, I became more comfortable making mistakes because I realized that they were a natural part of the learning process. The more I practiced this approach, the more confident I became. I stopped fearing mistakes, and instead, I started seeing them as a normal part of the journey. This shift in mindset made a huge difference in how I approached conversations, and it also helped me feel more at ease when speaking. So to anyone who's afraid of making mistakes or feels like their confidence will be shattered if they slip up, remember that mistakes are not the enemy. They're part of the process, and the more you embrace them, the more confident you will become. The key is to handle them with grace, learn from them, and keep moving forward. Confidence doesn't come from perfection. It comes from knowing that mistakes are just stepping stones on the path to improvement. Myth number 5. You either have confidence or you don't. This was one of the biggest myths I had to break free from, and it took me a long time to realize it wasn't true. For years, I believed that confidence was something you either had or you didn't. I thought some people were just born confident, while others, like me, were simply destined to be shy and uncertain. But the truth is, confidence isn't something you're born with. It's a skill that you can develop over time. When it comes to speaking, especially in a second language, confidence doesn't just appear out of nowhere. No one is born a naturally confident speaker. It takes practice, trial and error, and sometimes stepping outside of your comfort zone to build real confidence. It's a gradual process that requires facing your fears, making mistakes, and continuing to push yourself to try again. For a long time, I thought confidence was something I could never achieve. I compared myself to others who seemed so at ease speaking English, and I told myself that I'd never be as confident as they were. But then I realized that confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to take risks, make mistakes, and learn from them. I decided to take action. I committed to making small, consistent efforts every day to improve my English and build my confidence. Whether it was striking up a conversation with a friend, practicing new vocabulary, or simply speaking out loud to myself, I took those small steps daily. Each time I pushed myself to speak, even if it was uncomfortable or difficult, I noticed small victories. Maybe it was saying a sentence without hesitation, or understanding a conversation without struggling to catch every word. These small wins added up, and over time, I began to feel more confident in my abilities. The key here is consistency. Confidence isn't built overnight, and it certainly doesn't come from avoiding mistakes or staying in your comfort zone. It's built through consistent practice and a willingness to keep going, even when it feels hard. As I continued to practice and face my fears, my confidence grew, little by little. And with every step forward, I realized that confidence wasn't something I had to wait for. It was something I could create for myself by taking action and staying committed to improving. If you're someone who feels like you'll never be confident, I want you to know this. Confidence is a journey, not a destination. It's something you can develop over time. You don't have to be born with it. You can build it through consistent effort, facing your fears, and pushing yourself to speak. Every small action you take adds up, and before you know it, you'll be looking back and realizing just how far you've come. So take that first step today, and remember that confidence is something you can create, not something you have to wait for. Practical steps to build confidence and fluency. Now that we've debunked some of the common myths that may have held you back, let's focus on how you can build your English confidence and fluency with some practical, actionable steps. These strategies are designed to help you make steady progress and build confidence over time. 1. Practice speaking regularly. The first and most important step to building fluency is to practice speaking English every day. It doesn't matter if you're speaking to someone else or just talking to yourself. Speaking regularly helps you get more comfortable with the language. In fact, the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You might feel a little awkward at first, but that's completely normal. Start by speaking out loud in your daily life, whether it's reading something aloud, having a short conversation with a friend, or even recording your own voice. The key is consistency. The more you speak, the better you will get. Over time, your brain will start to process English more naturally, and speaking will become easier. 2. Focus on clarity, not speed. One of the most common misconceptions is that speaking fast equals fluency. This couldn't be further from the truth. Fluency isn't about how quickly you can speak. It's about speaking clearly and naturally. If you try to rush your speech, you might end up making more mistakes or losing your audience. Instead, focus on clarity. Aim for clear, well-structured sentences, and don't be afraid of taking pauses. Pauses allow you to think and organize your thoughts, which will ultimately make your speech sound more coherent and confident. So next time you speak, give yourself permission to take a breath, gather your thoughts, and continue. Remember, fluency is about smooth and clear communication, not speed. 3. Embrace mistakes. Mistakes are an inevitable part of the learning process, and instead of fearing them, you should embrace them as opportunities for growth. Everyone makes mistakes, even the most fluent speakers. The key is how you react to them. If you make a mistake, don't panic or get discouraged. Learn from it, correct it if necessary, and move on. Each mistake is a step toward improvement. The more comfortable you become with making mistakes, the more confident you will feel. After all, confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being comfortable enough to try, fail, and try again. So don't let a mistake stop you. Let it motivate you to keep going. 4. Ask for clarification. One of the signs of a confident speaker is the ability to ask for clarification when needed. If you don't understand something during a conversation, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. This shows that you're actively engaged in the conversation and are committed to understanding what's being said. It also demonstrates that you value clear communication. You might be worried that asking for clarification makes you seem unsure of yourself, but in reality, it makes you look even more confident because it shows that you're actively participating and striving to fully comprehend what's being said. Try using phrases like, "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you say it again?" Or, "I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain that in a different way?" These simple phrases can help you stay engaged and show that you're serious about improving your understanding. 5. Build confidence, step by step. Confidence doesn't happen overnight, and it's definitely not something you're either born with or not. It's a skill that's developed through consistent action. Start by taking small steps toward building your confidence and celebrate every victory along the way. For example, try setting a goal to speak for 5 minutes in English every day. Once you're comfortable with that, try increasing the time or making a more challenging conversation. Each small step you take will build your confidence, and the more progress you see, the more motivated you'll become to continue practicing. Over time, those small victories will add up, and you'll begin to notice a significant improvement in your speaking skills. Building confidence in English takes time and patience, but with consistent practice and a positive mindset, you can make real progress. Remember, everyone's journey is different, and what works for one person might not work for another. The key is to find what helps you feel confident and stick with it. Keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. Keep moving forward, and you'll be amazed at how far you've come. Conclusion: keep going, one step at a time. My journey to becoming confident and fluent in English wasn't easy, but looking back, every moment of struggle was worth it. I remember the frustrations, the doubts, and the times I wanted to give up. But I also remember the small victories, the moments when I finally understood a new concept, when I successfully held a conversation, and when I stopped fearing mistakes. These moments were the milestones that showed me I was making progress, even if it didn't always feel that way. Through this journey, I learned that confidence and fluency don't come overnight. They're built through consistent practice, patience, and a willingness to keep going even when things get tough. And here's the best part: you can do it too. Whether you're just starting your English learning journey or you've been at it for a while, remember this: there's no rush. It's okay to struggle, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to take your time. What matters is that you don't stop. The key is to keep moving forward, even if it's just one step at a time. The road to fluency may seem long, but every day you practice, every time you speak, and every new word you learn, you're getting closer to your goal. Believe in yourself and your ability to improve. Don't compare your progress to anyone else's. This is your journey, and it's unique to you. As I look back at how far I've come, I realize that the process itself was just as valuable as the end result. The challenges taught me perseverance, the mistakes taught me humility, and the victories, no matter how small, filled me with pride and motivation to keep going. So, if you're ever feeling discouraged, remember, the most important thing is to keep going, keep practicing, keep learning, and, most importantly, keep believing in yourself. You are capable of achieving fluency and confidence in English, step by step, day by day. Thank you for reading my story, and I hope it has inspired you to continue your own English learning journey. Keep pushing forward, and don't forget to celebrate every little victory along the way. You've got this.